There's a phenomenon I see sometimes as people are sort of engaging this awakening process. And it's something like being too zoomed out. So we could talk about experience, or this moment-to-moment experience or presence, as being something that could be on a range from experience close to experience distant. Now, in truth, you're never distant from experience. You're never apart from anything. There's not a you standing apart from an experience. There's not a subject standing apart from an object. All of that is true. And yet, experientially, it can feel as if we have some variation in the distance from experience. Like we can be experience distant or experience close. And you can practice working with this if you want to. You could practice working with sound, for instance. What is the difference between being experience close and experience distant from sound? Well, certainly thinking about sound, thinking about what you've heard, getting behind the experience of sound in thought, such that there almost feels like there's time in which the experience of thought or sound or any other experience is being processed, and you're doing the processing. That's more experience distant, if that makes sense. When there's sound just as sound, when there's not even the sense of where the sound is, it sounds perhaps rather close or intimate. Also, there's no sense of someone apart from the sound at all. It's just this absorption in sound or just sound. That would be experience close, yeah? Now, this is much easier with a specific sensory phenomenon to investigate or test, right? With a sound or something in the visual field, perhaps, or a sensation in the body. But when it's just about moment-to-moment experience, when it's about perhaps even meditative states or day-to-day experience, often what I see is people being a little too zoomed out in the way they're describing their experience. In fact, the mere tendency to describe experience itself is kind of zoomed out, right? Sure, they may be describing it to me for feedback, but also the way they're processing, I can tell they're also describing it to themselves, right? Ongoing, like when they're not trying to communicate something specifically to another person, they may actually be kind of engaging that internal dialogue, right? Wondering, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? A common one is like, here's the experience I'm having, right? I'm noticing this experience. And then actually questioning the experience, like, is this more like what you said or more like what this other, facilitator said? Or they'll question like labels even, like, is it this or is it that, right? Is this presence or is it something else, right? And again, I have to discern a little bit in those moments, like, are they doing this just in the moment, asking me to like dial into their experience in a sense? Or is this ongoing in someone's mind? They're questioning their own experience all the time, or a lot of the time, or even when they're meditating, right? And so a lot of the pointing I give around this is often notice thoughts, and the thoughts can be a sort of hidden belief that I may not be doing this right. If the belief is I may not be doing this right, then there'll be some analysis following it, like, well, maybe I should do it like this person said, or maybe I should do it like that person said. But when we get at the belief and recognize it's really just a thought that says maybe this could be other than it is, or it's not right, or I need to figure out the right approach. Oh, those are beliefs and thoughts. That's the experience of distance. Now, when we just set those aside and go right to the experience, then the experience also comes to us, right? The pure experience, the momentary experience, the direct experience. To zoom out for a moment in this conversation, the apprehension of what's actually meant by direct experience is such a key issue with this whole awakening process. Someone I know who has a lot of experience and profound realization and discernment about this, says, for some reason, some people just don't seem to get what direct experience means. Like they don't find it in their process somehow. I'm less, I guess, rigid in my view of that. I think anyone can, but I think it does take some people longer for various reasons. Sometimes it's just happenstance. Like they just don't quite realize what we're talking about when we talk about direct experience. And it can take quite some time to really come online. And you can even have significant degrees of realization. You can have an awakening and so forth. And then still things are rather fluid to where you may have moments where you're sort of zoomed out and moments where you're totally immersed and you don't realize the difference. You don't realize like what the key difference is the knowing engagement of direct experience, for lack of a better way of saying it. So yeah, even in deeper realization, sometimes it'll just dawn on someone what that actually means, that what's actually occurring right now, occurring being just a word I have to use, but what's actually here right now really is the only possibility. And it's not conceptual, and it's not subject to, is it this or that? It's not like questionable in that way, right? So once you know direct experience this clearly, this almost concretely, then there's really no more need to compare it so much to other pointings or descriptions. Doesn't mean that other pointings can't be helpful, but they're more helpful through directed inquiry into the clarity of the experience itself, rather than to compare the experience to a theoretical experience. Hopefully that makes sense. So anyway, as we sort of dial into direct experience, we realize like questioning it doesn't do anything. You don't need to question your experience. It doesn't give you anything to get validation from me or someone else about whether it's the right experience. It is the right experience. It's the only experience. It's not right or wrong. Now, something that gets overlaid on this often is that we have a lot of belief, and a lot of this belief actually came from other people, came from social conditioning, from familial conditioning. So then we have this belief that's so deeply rooted that we actually apply it to this sort of pointing and teaching, overlooking that a good teacher, facilitator, whatever, will say it really has nothing to do with how it feels. It's not whether it feels good or bad, right? But the belief we have picked up from social conditioning, familial conditioning, is that if it's bad, if it feels uncomfortable, it's wrong somehow. If it feels uncomfortable, you're in the wrong place, or you're looking in the wrong direction, or you're doing it wrong, right? We pick this belief up, and then we do apply that a lot of times to the experience. Like, it doesn't feel clear, though. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel, but clear and right and all of that is a bunch of interpretation. It feels how it feels, right? Does that make sense? So, so just know that also that probably plays into it, that we have this deeply rooted belief that if something doesn't feel clear or right, or maybe our own ideas of what presence is supposed to be, or our own memory of an experience of presence being really clear or something like that, then it's wrong. But it's not wrong, it's what's actually happening. Present experience can't be wrong. It's not right or wrong, it's just this, right? So that plays into it, where you're like, oh, something doesn't feel right. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe I need to ask Angelo, like, is this the way I should approach it, or is that the way I should approach it? Or but if you're approaching it, you're back from it, right? You're zoomed out, so to speak. So, boy, I don't know, 50% of what the kinds of questions or the way I answer questions, maybe not 50%, I don't know, 20, 30%, 40%, it varies, has some component of this though, where I just tell people it's okay that if it's uncomfortable, whatever's happening is just happening. You can't control it, and you don't need to question it. And that sort of allows you to zoom in. Or I just point to it and just say, just allow it to come closer, allow it to move through, allow it to wash over you, or allow yourself to just touch it, to come into contact with it, to accept it, to acknowledge it, whatever, right? All of this sort of leads to this direct experience and a deeper trust of direct experience, and a knowing that that's really all there is, There aren't two ways that this moment can be. There aren't three ways this moment can be. It is just how it is. And then once that's clear, you realize there is no how it is. It's that full on. It's that immediate, immersive, and so forth. So that's what I mean by don't be too zoomed out. And with some people, I do say it, kind of repetitively. I do have to say it again and again. And that's fine. I don't get impatient with it. I understand. The mind is powerful. It has a lot of momentum. It grabs you many times. But I thought making a video about it may just be a better reminder in a broad sense that being too zoomed out is often, well, it's a habit, but it's maybe it's an adjustment that can be made, or a recognition that can be made that type of engagement with the moment, with your practice, let's say, is just not helpful, really. I mean, maybe there are exceptions, but generally speaking, it's just not what I'm pointing to. I'm pointing to experience close, which may feel really uncomfortable in the moment. And but it changes, of course, all the time. So, yeah. And you could even put that together and say that the conditioning we have that says I don't want to feel uncomfortable, or I shouldn't feel uncomfortable, can get intermixed with the communication with another person, or even a facilitator or a therapist, where you kind of expect that person to make you feel better. But I'm not really here to make you feel better. I'm here to help you see more clearly. That's it. Right? Which will make you feel different over time. Yeah. The preference always would be for experience close, for immersion, for contact, intimacy. And the tendency to pull back from it, to run away from it, to try to escape whatever is strong. It has a lot of momentum, a lot of history to it, but it can subside. And when it does, it's like just what's happening, takes so much strain out of the system, so much stress of what to do, how to proceed, how to position, how to formulate a view. Like all of that falls apart because it's not necessary. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Don't zoom out too much. Zoom in or I say zoom in, but I also don't want to reinforce holding experience at a distance by trying to zoom into it in a way. It's more like just relax, let the experience come to you, let it wash over, let it wash through, and deconstruct those beliefs that you have to manage it, that you are at a distance from it, etc.